Cybersecurity is one of the hottest topics in tech right now. And today, Devonie is here to break it down how she got into tech, why she decided to pursue this route, and everything that helped her in her journey to becoming a cybersecurity specialist. Welcome to the show today.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, let's take it all the way back to the beginning, right? Why did you choose cybersecurity specifically?
For the money.
Hmm.
A little bit. It's deep, right? There's layers to it. So I um I ended up in a situation where I needed to find some stability pretty quickly, and I just happened to have a friend who worked in security and identity and access management, and I saw that she was doing well financially and also seemed to enjoy her career. So I just took a page out of her book and I was like, look, I need to make something work. And I decided to make cyber work and I just so happen to love it.
So I like kind of like how you broke that down, but knowing what you know now, if you had to do this again, would you go that same route? Like, would you just look at someone and say, "Oh, I'm gonna do what they're doing," or is there a better way? Maybe that's the better question. Is there a better way to make a decision if you finally want to go into tech? How to do it?
Um, yes and no. I think that right now the industry is just it's just overwhelmed with so much information basically saying that if you choose data analytics, you choose cybersecurity, you choose coding, anything like that, you can do it and you can do it in 2 weeks or you can do it in a month or something like that. So I personally wouldn't change what I did. I would never change getting into cybersecurity. Like, this happened to be my dream job, and I love it, so I wouldn't change what I did, but I would change, like you said, the approach, and just get more of an understanding of what I was getting myself into. Like like I said, it was more of a stability thing for me when I entered in, and I just had to make something happen. So I kind of like went down the rabbit hole of getting into security with no context as to what I would be doing. I would not advise anybody to do that.
Hmm. That's a really, and the reason why I asked this question is like, this is the first question most people have, especially, they see some inspirational or aspirational video and that makes them want to do it. But then it's almost like how to do. So if you had to change that, for example, you said get more information. Is there a formula for doing that? Like, how would you do it if you had to redo it?
You can go about it a number of ways. So if you hear, get into cybersecurity, you decide that's the path that you want to take, you can speak to people that work in security. You can watch podcasts like this, hear day in the life, what actually working in that role is going to look like. Because I realize I mentor a lot of people that want to get into security, and realistically, a lot of people that come to me and say they want to get into security, they also don't know what it is. So I'm like, have you sat down? Have you watched a YouTube video? You don't even have to buy a course. You don't have to sign up, pay all this money. You don't have to jump into a boot camp. You don't have to jump into school. Literally get on YouTube and watch an introduction to cybersecurity video. Like, that's as simple as it is. Is this something that can keep your interest long enough for you to pursue it long term? Because when you get into this industry or you attempt to get into this industry, it's going to be a nonstop grind. So it has to be something you can commit to.
And you bring up such a really good point, right? That I almost want to double click on because that's definitely one of the really best ways to do the research. But one of the things that I've also found is that for a lot of people, when you say that, it almost comes off as you're being dismissive, right? Like, because, and now that you say that, I think about it, it almost feels like there's a learning pattern that we have in general as people that I feel like gets broken, when we think about being able to learn on our own. So a lot of the times when people come to me and I give that advice, it almost sounds like, oh, the reason why you're telling me to go watch or go do this is because you don't want to tell me. But literally, it's because I can't tell you, right? Like, something that's so important in tech, and you know this, right? Anybody who's in tech knows this. You're going to have to do a lot of figuring out on your own. And
Absolutely.
there's no better time for you to practice it than when you're trying to do it. So, how important or how does somebody who's new get comfortable with just going down that rabbit hole by themselves?
I think the biggest takeaway that I have from my own journey is once you do realize that there are so many resources out there for you to be able to learn cybersecurity, like I said, for free, um, the biggest thing that I try to tell people is not to sign up for everything. Like don't fall down the information overload rabbit hole, because you can sign up for a subscription to Coursera. You can sign up for Udemy classes. You can sign up for LinkedIn learnings. You can sign up for all sorts of free boot camps and free trainings. And every single every vendor in the whole wide world has an intro to cybersecurity, and they're gonna, be baking in their own product into what they're teaching you, right? So later on, when you do become a practitioner, you have a bias towards their product. But I would say find something, preferably something free, and stick with it. Like, find a course that's going to be not too long, something you can complete maybe in about 2 weeks to a month, just so you can get a feel for it, dip your toe in, and just stay committed to that thing. Even if you feel like, okay, I'm 2 weeks into this content, it's probably not the best. There probably is something better out there. Unless it just completely sucks, like, just stick with it and get it done. Like, that was the hardest thing for me, because there was so much available. There was so much content available for me to consume. I was just kind of like picking out everything, and I never finished anything. So it took me a lot longer to learn the basics of the information that I really needed to know getting into the industry, just because I had noise coming in from so many different places.
I want to give you a shout out real quick before we move on. So Sam is here on the chat saying, great content. Yeah, great content. Thank you, Sam. And of course, follows up with a comment saying, it finds it hard to study alone, working on being more productive. And that's the point I really want to double click on, right? That I think there's a psychological part to tech that a lot of people don't focus on. I'd like you to touch on it, right? Because one of the things, so I've had some OGs on this podcast, like people who were learning coding when you went to learn coding in a textbook, right? Mm-hmm. We live in the opposite realm now where everything is easy, right? There's a million courses, people are pumping out videos, this podcast like this, like you can never say there's no information. Right. But I think that's also a downside on its own, right? It's like there's so much, it's hard to stay focused and be structured. And like you can get distracted looking at a content and wondering like, is this good? Should I stick with it? And then you decide not to, but then it hurts you. How important is it to have that I'm a start it, I'm a finish mentality?
It's extremely important. But there's a caveat to that, right? So when I started, I hadn't identified completely that I wanted to be in cybersecurity when I first started trying to get into tech. So I actually got accepted into a boot camp that was free for me to take, and it was a full stack Java developer boot camp. And it took all of my day. It was like being in school. It was literally a boot camp. So it consumed a lot of my time, and I was also working on my master's in security. So going through that, I had to recognize that at that particular time, it wouldn't benefit me to focus on full stack Java development. Like, I had to, be okay with letting something go, taking something off my plate. But it was because I knew what I wanted to do. It wasn't like I said, oh, well, I'm taking this class and it's just a little bit too hard and I don't want to work a little bit harder or anything like that. I just had to recognize where my priorities were. So as long as you have your priorities in line, or at least a rough draft, like if you say, okay, I'm going to start working on a path to get on the red team or the blue team or whatever the case may be, that may change, and that's okay. But just as long as you find something that you can stick with, be open to kind of shifting gears when it's necessary, but also stay committed, and don't just give up on something because it's hard. It's all hard. You just got to choose your heart.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's my next video that I'm dropping. It's very hard. So if you're just joining us, welcome to the podcast. Devonie is a cybersecurity specialist. We're diving deeper into her experience, as we have this conversation. If you're excited about cybersecurity, as a lot of people are, I think this is a great conversation to help you fully understand what the role entails, the things you need to learn, how to get in, etc. So stick with it. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. and we'll try to get to every single one of them to help you get your start in cybersecurity and in tech in general. So thinking back to like, I think everything that you say points back to research, right? Like not losing valuable time, not going down the wrong rabbit hole before really figuring out what works for you. And I just wanted to kind of like reiterate that, like how important it is. So when you eventually decided that, Java wasn't for you and you wanted to go a different route, how did you decide, for example, you talk about the red team, blue team, and all this other like, decisions. How did you make those?
For me, some of it was made for me. So like I said, when I was doing that boot camp, I had also started my master's degree in security management. And because I went into this process very uneducated about what I was getting myself into, I found out later that my master's program was not a technical degree program. So my master's, it's a focus in cybersecurity, but it is more closely related like to GRC and to the business side of things. So naturally, I started looking for GRC roles just because that was basically what my coursework was tailored to. But getting into cyber, since it's such a big field, there's so many different things that you can do. I was and still am pretty open to different directions that I could take my career in. So, and I will probably touch on the different roles that I've had so far in the industry. So, a lot of it, getting your foot in the door in cybersecurity, getting that first job for a lot of people is very hard. So once I got my first job, I kind of navigated what I was going to do with my career from there.
So thinking about all of this, right? Like you had touched on it a little bit, like you were in a moment where you figured like something had to change, right? Um, why did you, of course you said the money and you and your friend, but why did you think that this was possible? Because another thing that I think deters a lot of people from even trying is that they can see the vision, but they make excuses like, oh, of course you're super smart, of course you're a nerd, of course you're this, you're that. There's still a little bit, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but people still have a lot of misconceptions about what technology is and it isn't. How did you navigate that, or was that even a challenge you had to deal with?
Um, well, there's a lot of layers there. For me, deciding to go into tech specifically, um, I'm I don't want to say I've been called like a genius or anything like that, but I've done well in school. I have my undergraduate degree is in biology. I was pre-med when I was in undergrad, so learning is come fairly easily to me. Um, but I mean, now, and it's funny that I even say that because now that I'm in this industry, there's so much to learn that I just feel like a fish out of water all the time. Sometimes people speak to me and my eyes glaze over. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I think that's the biggest thing for me is just being okay with that, with being okay with the fact that I don't know everything. I will never know everything. But to me, when I got into it, the fear of like how hard I was gonna work to understand everything, it just didn't scare me. Like I knew that I had to make this happen. And they say like, I don't know, hard work beats talent. There's a saying that goes with it, I don't know.
Mhm.
But so as long as you are committed and you stick to what you're learning and you grinding it out, like nobody's gonna beat you just because they're naturally smarter than you.
Mm.
They might get lucky, but most people will not beat you just because they're smarter than you. As long as you're working hard and putting in the work, like it's, the opportunities are there.
And I think that's such a good point that you bring, because I think, of course, like I think everyone has a certain level of ability, right? Um, but I think that hard work piece, it's something that gets overlooked a lot, but is extremely important. Like, in fact, I think making it in tech oftentimes is like down to how bad you want it, right? Like, you can't study your way to a job, for example. Like, I made a video yesterday where I really resonated with a lot of people, and that's what it was saying. It's like a lot of people focus on like the learning, but they completely ignore like the applying, the getting rejected, the learning why you got rejected, the learning new things and building relationships. Like And that's the thing. It's like you, unlike most other careers, where, for example, like, if you go to medical school and you fail, you fail. Like there's no recourse, right? You see what I'm saying? It's either you take the exam again or whatnot. But tech isn't like that, right? Like there's so many pathways in, and if you're willing to put in the work, what you may lack in maybe like natural technical acumen and other things, you can make up in a lot of other places. And like, there's something for everybody. That's kind of at least what I found. So yeah, completely valid what you said. So one of the things that you've mentioned is like the different roles that you've held. I definitely really want to dive into that just to help the people watching like understand, one, the dynamism of tech careers in general, and then two, how you've been able to kind of like learn and navigate those different opportunities.
Okay. So for me, I still consider myself a baby in this industry. I've been in my current role for almost a year and a half now. I say I go back and forth from saying this is my first role in tech. So rewinding all the way back when I had started my master's, that was in August of 2022, and by the following year, in May, May, I want to say April. That whole time I wasn't working. I had gotten laid off from the job that I was at before. It was in customer service. Um, So that whole time I didn't work. I was just grinding out doing school. By May, I got an internship, um, and it was not directly within cybersecurity. It was working with physical network security cameras, and I was a sales intern, so I wasn't even like getting hands on with the cameras or anything like to understand the tech. But it was a good opportunity for me at the time, honestly, just to get myself out of the funk of not having a job, because that is a real thing. Like it can be depressing, honestly. When you are grinding day in and day out towards like switching careers, and you're constantly applying and you're just not getting anything. And I was at a weird space where, because I was in school, I was in a master's program, and they had internships available for master's students, but I was so new to everything that I didn't really understand the timelines. I didn't understand like where to apply. I was brand new to networking, all of those things. So the timing didn't work out. And it was like when my graduation date was going to be, that it just didn't fit for me to get a regular internship. So this was something that I found through a networking connection. But I was there for a couple of months, and it it wasn't a very difficult role. So I had the flexibility where I could still be looking for other jobs and things like that. Um, I had a I had a sorry, I'm blanking. I had a recruiter reach out to me from God knows where. I don't even know where they got my email from, but they were sending me emails about this position, and it was for a network security engineer. And I'm like, I don't know anything about networking. So, like I said, my degree wasn't technical, so I didn't feel very strong. I had done like one firewall project. Um, so they kept sending me this email about a network security engineer. I'm like, I was gonna email them back, like, can y'all stop sending this to me, because I feel like y'all are just like teasing me at this point. So finally, I get another email. It's the same position, but it says will train, and I'm like, y'all not training no engineers. So, but I was like, okay. So here's the experience that I have. They wanted somebody with experience with firewalls. I'm like, I had one firewall project. I can do it. So they, and when I ended up speaking to them, it turned out to be, I don't, I kind of say that I was the team secretary. Basically, they needed somebody to come onto their network security engineering team and kind of just do like the grunt work, like watch all the tickets that were coming in and feed them into the engineers that actually knew what they were doing. But the job, I wouldn't know that from the job description. That was just something, me taking a leap of faith and sending in my application, and the hiring manager ended up giving me a chance. And knowing that I had a lot to learn. So I left from the internship and went into that role. I was there for about 2 months, and 2 months later, I got an email or a LinkedIn message from my current manager, similar stories saying, hey, I have a role that looks like, well, this was actually more direct. He had seen my profile on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I have a role that seems like it'd be a good fit for you. It looks like you just started at another place, but if you're interested, take a look and, you can apply if you want to. So I looked at what was on the job description, and it looked pretty much like a dream job for where I was at that point. And I applied, interviewed, got the job, and I'm here.
Okay, so first thing you got to do, you got to drop your LinkedIn secrets, because if you're getting this many people hit you up, then you got to know what you put in the LinkedIn.
I will. We
and then, and then second of all, you touch on something that's also so important that I tell people. I literally also tweeted this yesterday about how important it is for people to apply. Like, always be applying, like always, especially like if you don't have an opportunity, if you're looking for that first opportunity, somebody somewhere might mess up. And that's the thing. It's like people will put things on roles that they may not necessarily be looking for. But if they're putting out a JD, it's standard. So you never know when they're willing to take a chance. You never know when they're looking for higher quality candidates or whatnot. You don't know that, but that's none of your business anyway. Like, your business is putting yourself out. You're gonna get a million no's. Who cares? All you need is that one yes, right? Ultimately. And I think a lot of people don't have the perspective, right? Because you're almost the second person who this is happening to. In my current role, I've never done the role before. Like, I've never done it. I had nothing to do with it. I have a lot of key experience that's relevant to the role, but not in the ways designing the role, right? And I found out that my foundational skills are very relevant in doing many of the things in the function. But if I went by just the job title and the job description alone, I would never be in this opportunity. And I think that's saying something for a lot of people. It's like, you have a lot of skills. You're building on something. Don't easily discard opportunities just because it doesn't come wrapped within. And there's another even element that I want to touch on too, because, I almost have a controversial take about putting like looking for work on LinkedIn, right? Because we live in a world where people, someone saw you already got a job, new job, and they're hitting you up saying, come work for me. People just like that. They want, there's a saying about like people don't want who nobody wants. Like, it's that thing. And it works in career too. Like, to where like the fact that you have opportunity, the fact that you take opportunity as a way of creating more opportunity for you. So I think you dropped a lot of gems. I just wanted to call out each individual piece because they resonated so much. But I definitely want to go to the LinkedIn, because we had a training program at some point where, we had a LinkedIn specialist that said something, and it stuck with me since then. He's like, resumes are the past, which I don't agree with that part. But then he says LinkedIn is the future. It's like recruiters are always on LinkedIn. And if you want to get a job, you got to stand out where they hang out. So in your case, it's proven that you have a fire LinkedIn. What did you put in it?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't want to say my LinkedIn is not anything special, because obviously it definitely helped get me where I am today. I think that everything serves a purpose. So yes, your resume is going to serve its purpose. Absolutely. Your LinkedIn is going to serve its purpose. But what are you doing with it? Like, for me, because I was working on getting into cybersecurity, I joined a lot of organizations. So I'm a member of Women in Cybersecurity, National Society of Black Engineers, Blacks in Technology, all these things, right? So anytime that I do anything associated with those organizations, I'll post it. I'm tagging the organizations. I'm tagging Women in Cybersecurity. So anybody in that community or anybody looking for anybody in those communities can see my posts. So I'm extremely visible because I take advantage of the hashtags, and I just make sure it's a numbers game, right? So anything that I do, I'm posting it on LinkedIn. So I complete a try hack me room, even if it's just a small room, like meaningless to anybody else. I'm still going to post that I did it on LinkedIn, because I want people to know. I want employers to know. I want my future, colleagues to know that I'm constantly on my grind. Like, I'm not just sitting over here hoping for it and clicking easy apply on 100 LinkedIn applications. Like, I'm out here and I'm grinding. And you can see that because I post everything that I do to my LinkedIn.
We're clipping exactly this part and posting it because somebody literally asked, how do you make a good LinkedIn? And I think you shared a masterclass on it. Again, I'll recap it just in case anybody missed it. Number one, of course, you want to have a fire profile, but it doesn't stop there. Like if you say you're doing, like if you have 17 years in cybersecurity or DevOps or anything else, and you don't post on your LinkedIn, kudos to you. But if you're trying to break in, like you want that chance, because at that point, I don't think a lot of people have expectation of skill or experience. But if you don't show grind, why should people even care? And it says a lot about you if you're invested in community, you're invested in learning. Because ultimately, we know if I'm a hiring leader, I know, for example, this person will seek knowledge and they'll leverage opportunities with people to learn. So people wonder like why those things matter. That's why it matters, right? Because if you're not saying anything, you're not doing anything, how do I know if I hire you, I'm not hiring a liability, quote unquote? You may be great, you may be a great learner, you may apply it, but if you've not shown evidence of it, how can I know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people miss. So I knew you had to be doing something. I knew for you to get hit up that many times, I knew there was something there. So thanks for sharing that. So in the network, because I see like you've kind of like had different roles. What were the things that you liked about that initial role? I know you didn't spend a lot of time there, but I know like network security is something that's very big, and definitely curious to hear your perspective on that.
Honestly, it's kind of just a theme for both of the roles that I've held in security. I just appreciated, number one, that there was always something to do. You will never get bored. Like I get bored easily. So like if I have to do something day in and day out, I wake up every day, it is the same. Eventually I'm going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've never had a day like that since I worked in security. I have never been sitting at my desk like, oh my God, I'm dreading being at this job today. Like I wake up and I'm excited because there is always something to look forward to. So working in network security specifically, it was, I will say that was difficult for me because I didn't have the proper foundation. Like I didn't get my security plus until last year. So I was already a year into my role before I even got it. So it was a really huge learning curve. It was a lot of imposter syndrome going on when I had that role specifically. One of the best things that I did, that happened to me, but I would advise, I got a mentor. So I was essentially partnered with a senior network engineer, and he would just kind of give me the game. He would give me homework like, hey, we're working on Palo Alto firewalls. Like you were working on, F5 or, whatever the case may be. There's plenty of documentation on it. I have resources. I'll send them to you. Just go out and go learn this thing and come back to me. Tell me what you learned. So I had somebody essentially holding me accountable to go out and get that knowledge and come back. They wouldn't let me touch the firewalls, but at least I kind of understood what was happening.
That's dope. And we have a question from Sam. What's the best way to handle stress?
For me, what's the best way to handle stress? Just taking a break. What do people say on the internet? Go outside, touch some grass. Like if you're stressed out about something, honestly, like anybody knows if you're working on something that's difficult, especially I hear this a lot from developers, when your code isn't working, you get up, you go for a walk, you go do something fun and come back and it just kind of comes to you. So if you are stressed specifically about what you're learning, just take a break. Like you don't have to study for 10 hours a day. There's studies around like what's the most efficient, effective time frame. Sorry if y'all can hear my child, I'm so sorry. But I want to say it's between like 1 and 3 hours per day to like hardcore study something before your brain is going to be like, girl, I'm good. So just don't overload yourself. Take breaks as needed, and just know that as long as you're committed for the long term and not trying to like digest everything in one sitting, it's gonna come.
I think that's definitely a very key aspect of that is like figuring out like the next thing. I think a lot of burnout, a lot of stress happens like when we overload and complicate things, and like and it's something that I use in my day to day because I almost have like a million and one different streams going on at the same time. So whenever I feel that, it's kind of like what you described is what I do is that I just try to put one foot in front of the other and like just figure out that next move. Um, so kind of like in your learning and progression journey, what are some of the things that you found to be the most useful? Of course, I know like you've talked about like networking, uh, mentorship, but what are some of the other like frameworks that help you? For example, like you're taking a new course or certification, you're trying to learn a new concept. What have you found to be like most useful?
Um, as far as like specific platforms, I like the try hack me, hack the box, those kinds of things. Anything where you can be hands on, because for me, like just straight reading material out of a book, not gonna do anything for me. So as long as I find a platform where I can learn and there's also like some sort of hands on component, then I do really well with that. Um, and I was actually on another show and I talked about Clicked. There was a program that I did where there was like hands on projects. I'm not sure if they offer the same ones. I know there's been some changes in their company, but just anything like that. Like there's so many different like cybersecurity or tech development programs where you can get like hands-on experience. There's one company, I think it's called Forage, and you can go on there and do like simulated job experiences, things like that. So anything that's hands-on, anything where you could take the words out of the book and apply it to what you're actually going to be doing. So
Mm,
work the best for me. Because if I just read something and it's like, okay, I know what the CIA triad is, but like, what does that look like when I'm actually, working within my organization? So,
yeah, I'm taking my security plus as well at the moment, so I hate that I know exactly what that means.
and I love that for you.
Yeah, I've actually enjoyed it, even though like I'm still like fairly new. I literally just finished the first lesson. Um, but yeah, I definitely think like all of these things like are things that really, really excite me. Networking, security. I've mostly been a PM, so like I'm definitely dipping my toe in like more technical concepts, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't think that I definitely want to be like writing code or doing any of that, but I'm really just fascinated about all of how all of this kind of like layers beneath it work.
Mhm.
So in terms of like mentorship, right? What are some of the things that have helped you build mentors? I say this because like I know for a lot of people who are outside of tech, one, they don't work in tech, so they don't have tech mentors, right? Two, it can seem very intimidating and even unrealistic. Like, why somebody who doesn't know me from anywhere just want to help me? Like, why is that a thing? So, how does somebody get over that mental block and actually get the help they need to be able to do the things they need to do?
Luckily for y'all in this day and age, you don't have to. If you are introverted like me, and it's very difficult to just go out into the world and see somebody that's doing something really awesome in security, and you think that they will be a great mentor, like you can approach them. Like it happens. I do it sometimes, but like I touched on earlier, so many organizations. So you have like Cybersecurity. I mentioned Black Girls Hack, women in cybersecurity, blacks in cybersecurity, blacks in tech. All of these programs have a mentorship component. So they will have like a year or semi-annual like mentorship cohort where you can apply and they will essentially take whatever you say in your onboarding. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. This is where I'm at, and partner you with somebody who they deem to be a great mentor for you. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, go to the next cycle, go to the next organization, go to the next opportunity. Like, but at least you can use those things to kind of start getting comfortable with, what kind of questions can I ask a mentor. When I first did it, the first time I did something like that was with women in cybersecurity, and they partnered me with a mentor, and they basically had the framework built out where she would come every month or so that we met, and there were we had tasks that they wanted us to work on. So everything was kind of built out for us, so I didn't have to figure it out. And then along with the networking, I go out in person to a lot of networking events. I go out to a lot of conferences. As long as you're out there and you're active in the community, like a lot of times you don't have to search for people. Like people will just find you. So I've gotten mentors just because I'm in these spaces and I'm able to talk to people and tell people what I want. They're like, hey, I have a solution for that, or hey, I can help guide you. So a lot of it is organic.
Mm. And I think so. Maybe to ask this as a question, what are the kind of questions to ask a mentor, or what are the kind of questions not to ask a mentor? Because I do believe like there's a right, wrong, and right way to do it, or at least what kind of questions you want to avoid asking a mentor.
Um, you want to avoid anything that is easily searchable online. I would say that number one. Just for me, at being in a position of mentorship, um, if you come to me and you're asking me how to get into cybersecurity, and I ask the question, what do you know what cybersecurity is, and you say no, like at that point I'm already turned off. Like, and it's not even because I want to gatekeep. It's not because I couldn't tell you what it is, I couldn't explain to you red team, blue team, all these things. It's because I have a specific skill set, I have a specific, my own journey, my own story, and none of what I tell you is going to resonate with you unless you have a foundational understanding, right? It's gonna, if I explain to you all the basics, well, I'm only a human. So if I've talked to you for an hour about what cybersecurity is, I can't give you the real keys. Like everything that I told you in that hour, you could have found out yourself, and I could have gave you like the real game if you would already known when you came.
And I think, that's definitely the most important part. But I think there's even one more layer that I typically see, right? Because one of the things I say to people is like, I mean, if you're paying somebody to be a mentor, maybe they're not really a mentor, maybe they're more of a coach, right? I think the key value to mentorship is being able to, just like you said, gain unique insight that you can't get yourself. But it costs something, right? All of this knowledge didn't come for free. You spend time, you spend money, you've spent, experience getting it. And while you may be willing to give it for free, you don't want to give it for nothing, right? And that's the part that people who want mentors need to clock, right? Because it's like they want to give it for free, but they don't want to give it for nothing. Like, I want to sow it as a seed that grows into a tree. So tomorrow I can say, oh, you see this person who's a senior manager of cybersecurity at XYZ company? I mentored them, right? That's the gratification. That's the fact that you can say you've helped build other people up. You don't want to tell somebody something that amounts to nothing. So a lot of times it also signals something if you're asking the most basic questions. Because like, I know I don't have the bandwidth to take you from literally 0 to 100. So if you're relying on the mentor to do everything for you, I'm sorry, but it's like you're not going to make it. Right. So there's something that's demotivating even to the mentor, right? That could be equally motivating if you do it the other way. Like, you come with a really intelligent question about, I've already done my research and I figured out red team, blue team. This is what my personality is like. I figure I'm a bit more technical, so I think this, but as my view of it, a little narrow, right? So when we're on that call and we're having that conversation, there's some things I'm breezing past because I figure like this person's smart enough. They already figured that out. So I can get to the heart of the real advice, like the real thing you want to know, that YouTube video, that course is not going to tell you.
Right.
And I can tell you my day-to-day experience. And I think that's a key value there that, I'm on kind of like those points that you're saying. And I think that's how people get the real value.
For sure. And people don't consider that, like, as a mentor or even as a coach, I'm still a human. So if you come to me, there was one guy who I was connected with. He was taking a boot camp, and it was like IT, like hardware, on that type of things. Like he was taking his A+. But he wanted some guidance from me, and I took the call. And this was like when I was very early on into like mentoring. So I was so used to just being bogged down by the people who were like, well, what's cybersecurity? What do you do? What does this mean? And like when he came to me, I about to open my mouth to tell him like my story. And he was like, "Oh, I already know that. I already watched this and this and this podcast that you was on. I looked at this essay that you wrote. I He knew everything about me and about what he wanted to do. So for me as a mentor, that makes me want to go harder for you. I'm like, okay, you did
What do you need?
your due diligence. Like, we gonna get you something. Like so it makes me want to grind harder for you if I know that you did what you were supposed to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think you could have said it any better. It's like that's actually the best example. It's like lean into the human, and for me, it says something about the person, right? Some again, you for most people, you're not going to have anything to offer your mentor. How about offer attentiveness, offer consideration, right? The fact that you respected the person enough to do some research. So meaning that this person was already learning from you even before they had the direct opportunity to. So when they say, I really want to learn from you, you know they're not bluffing because they've been doing it, right? Or are you reaching out to me because I made one post that now you saw and all of a sudden you were inspired and you're going to forget about it 3 days later? Or have you really invested an hour, 2 hours to really go deep and figure out like, is this person, because similar to like making a decision on what course, what field you want to go into, somebody who does that level of work, 90 times out of 100, they're going to succeed in tech because they already have, it's so funny now that I think about it. The very first skill somebody taught me to learn in tech was how to Google. And as basic as that is, I feel like it's the most important thing that I learned.
How to Google and now throw on how to tell GPT.
Yeah. Now it's out to chat GPT. And it's funny, like, it was so profound that one of my first YouTube videos was how to do, and when I say Google, like, of course, everybody knows how to Google, but like deep search, like putting tildes, excluding results, looking, reverse image searches, those type of stuff. Because I was building an e-commerce company and I needed to source images for things I didn't have. But I think that research component is so important because in tech, the knowledge is always new, it's always growing. So if you know how to find new information, you're always going to win. It's that simple. That's why it's so foundational. But going back to like cybersecurity, right? There's so many threats ongoing, new all the time. Like, how do you stay, up to date on all those different things?
Me personally, I watch a cybersecurity news show. I watch Dr. Joe Ozier's show on YouTube, Simply Cyber. Um, so plug for him. But that's just personally what I like. So I'm able to stay abreast of kind of what's going on. I work for a startup, so a lot of the major breaches that happen, I don't work with those platforms. Like I haven't used CrowdStrike before. A lot of stuff that happens with Active Directory, I don't use Active Directory, but at least it still builds me for my career, my own professional development because there's no guarantee. Nobody hops into their tech role and says I'm gonna retire from here, right? Like you gotta stay ready so you ain't gotta get ready, right? So
Facts.
I try to stay current on things that even if they don't apply necessarily to my current role, just so on the back end I'm building up those skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So Eric Jordan says, thanks for the LinkedIn tips. You both are giving some great info. Thank you so much. And if you're just joining us, this is the Working in Tech live stream. Devonie is sharing a lot of great advice. I'm not the one who's saying it. Errol Jordan is the one saying it, and everybody else. If you definitely need any questions, have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, and then we'll take them as we go along. We have 15 more minutes before we wrap it up, so there's still a lot of time for you to get those questions in. So when it comes to cybersecurity, one of the things that you kind of like establish early on is like there's many different roles. And a lot of times, like if you're watching from the outside, looking in, it almost feels like cybersecurity is one role, right? What are those different roles and what are the different skill sets that are required in different roles?
The main ones that, like I said, when I first started, I was looking at GRC specifically because I didn't have a tech background. So with GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, you're focusing on if essentially me in my current role, the security engineers, all the people who are working on the tech side, if we are meeting compliance, like regulatory compliance, like HIPAA, GDPR, all of those frameworks. So I want I have a love-hate relationship with the message that people spread related to GRC, because a lot of people make it seem like you don't have to be technical at all. And it's like, if you're auditing a system for compliance, you still have to understand what they're saying. Like, you may not be coding it yourself, you may not be building it yourself, but you still have to understand it. So there is a level of technical understanding that you have to develop to get into those roles as well. But or in my opinion, or you don't, and then you just suck at your job. I don't know what's going to happen. But so GRC is policy and compliance. I work, as far as like the other roles within security. A lot of people look at security analysts for an entry level role. My role is, my title is, well, I'm a junior security engineer. But things like analyst, engineer, they could mean different things, like depending on where you're at, right? Like a security analyst at company A probably doesn't have the same day-to-day tasks as security analyst at company B, right? My job
Right.
as a security engineer, I definitely don't have the same tasks that somebody at, a larger company like a Google would have, right? So I think whenever you're looking at specific roles, you need to also be looking at the job descriptions and just kind of understanding, like, if you say that you want to be a security engineer, look at several different companies and see what a security engineer means at that company. See what being a security analyst means at that company. And then identify those day-to-day tasks that you would like to do, and you can focus your job search on like the type of tasks that you would like to do. If you want to do incident response, if you want to do, I'm blanking on all the things, but vulnerability management, anything like that, you can isolate your search to what you will be doing at work and not necessarily on the title.
And what are some of the skills, right? Like, so yeah, what are some of the skills in those different roles? Like, do you need to know how to code? Do you like what are some of the things that people are always looking for?
So for me, I am kind of niching down into application security. So what I do in my current role, I basically audit our code. So I do manual audits, and then I use tools to audit our code base for any vulnerabilities. So for me, I don't know how to code, but I am learning how to do that so that I have a better understanding of what I'm auditing, because I can use the tool and it can tell me, hey, there's a vulnerability here. I can look at the CVSS score. I can go and I can research exactly what that means. But for me to have the level of comfortability that I need to feel like I'm ready to grow in my role, I feel like I do need to have a better foundation of being able to write the code myself, and just understanding what's actually going on. Like there's only so far ChatGPT can take you. There's only so far, like these automated tools can take you. So it definitely would just depend on, like I said, looking at the specific day-to-day tasks and then breaking that down and understanding what you would need to do to function in that role.
Yeah, that's definitely key. Certifications, right? They tell you you just need like Security Plus and one thing else, and then you're Gucci. I know you have thoughts. Share them.
Okay. Certifications is a technicality. Are they worth something? Absolutely. It'll get you past the ATS. It'll get you past the hiring manager who probably doesn't know a lick about security. No shade to them, but they understand that having these specific certifications are valuable. They list it on the job description, so it'll get you past that. It checks the box, in my opinion. I think Security Plus is a good one just because it can, give you an idea of how much you need to learn realistically. So you see so many different sides of cybersecurity when you're taking your Security Plus. I think that can. We talked about like how to identify where you want to niche down in your role. When you're taking those certifications, you can see the different topics that are talked about, the different roles that are talked about, and just kind of start building your path from there. So I think it's valuable in that aspect. But to be really honest with you, I think certifications just resume and don't do much for you outside of that. I think the really big um, what's going to get you where you need to go is doing projects, hands-on application, being able to talk about it, because anybody could sit down and take a test. I can find online right now a Security Plus uh, test bank, or just study the questions and answers, and I can learn how to take the test and I can take it next week. Or I can do that with a number of security certifications. But unless you've hands-on applied the material, then you're not going to know really what to do with the tools. You're not going to know how to talk about it.
And like that's so important, right? Because even in the interviews, right, you mostly get asked scenario-based questions, right? And you can make up stories, right? You can totally do that, but it doesn't come across as genuine. I literally had an interview with a candidate, and he dropped off so many like points that it was almost so robotic. There was no story in there. It was just, and then we do Linux and Red Hat and this and that, and it's this and that. It's like you're reading off all these things, but I can't really connect to any of the answers that you're giving, right? Whereas like I could have someone say, oh, you know what? I've not worked with this specific technology before, but tell me about the methodology and approach that they used to solve a similar problem. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for. But a lot of people don't know that. So to come back to that, right? For people who don't, because like you got lucky, right? You got the internship, you got the other job where they basically said, we want you, right? For people who don't get that opportunity, how do you start to learn and put, the learnings and the courses and the certifications into practice so you can be ready for the opportunity?
Well, that was kind of what I was saying before, with just like the job simulations. You can do personal projects, get you a GitHub, get some sort of a Google Drive, keep track of all your projects. Even with things like GRC, like you can audit your own, cybersecurity hygiene based on the NIST framework, right? Like you can make up your own projects. Google is right there. Like you can Google, cybersecurity projects, things that you can do in your day-to-day at home, build a home lab. And that way you get that hands-on, and it teaches you how to hands-on, do the thing, but it can also teach you like what you don't like. Like if you build a SOC lab at your house and you hate it, like maybe you probably shouldn't apply for a SOC analyst role, right? So
and I like that. Maybe you can share a few more examples, because of course we talk about projects. I don't work in this role, so I don't know what like a good side project is. So you've kind of like given some examples. Of there other examples? And for example, if somebody doesn't want to do it themselves, right? Because I know it can be intimidating. Are there communities? Are there platforms? Are there places where you can go to collaborate and find other people to kind of like work with to build these projects out to be able to speak to in your interview?
So a lot of like the personal projects, it'll either be a major platform, something like Click, like I was talking about before, where there's a company that puts on a specific, like, okay, for 2 weeks, you're going to do this. I did another one that's called IQ4. That one lasted like 3 months, and I worked on a team with people, and we worked on, I think the project was building a security program based on the NIST framework, right? I did a similar one like that with Clicks. And I was able to go each month, meet with my team. We were able to act essentially as a cybersecurity team, working on a specific problem, take that information, save that, and I use that to speak to my experience. But if you don't find something like that, or it just doesn't work with your time, because these were like live experiences, I had to meet with these people, like not in person, but virtually at a specific time. They have communities on Discord. They have all kinds of things. Twitter, you can find a lot of stuff on Twitter. But I know for me trying to learn Python, there's a course called 100 Days of Python on Udemy, and there's a Discord channel that goes along with it, so you can meet other people that are doing the same things. You can even coordinate and collaborate with other people that are learning along with you. Set up your own study groups. Set up your own just simulated experiences. So you don't. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me that I had with my journey to get in. Don't wait on somebody to give you an opportunity. You can create the opportunity for yourself. If you feel like you need a Security Plus study group, create one. Like, you be the one to make it.
Yeah, build your own. So Coyote says, what do you think about network engineering? Do you think it'll be relevant in the long run?
Absolutely. I think network engineering is going to be relevant in the long run. I think with AI, a lot of job experiences are going to change. I don't think that it will make any. I don't think it'll make network engineering irrelevant, but I think you will. The people who are going to go far in those types of industries are the people who can learn to adapt to the tech. So now you may not get away with just taking your network plus and learning, basic networking concepts. You may have to learn more about how AI is being integrated into that role and become an expert at that as well.
And we have another question from Arrow Jordan. It says, a family member does audits and recommended the Department of Defense security certifications. Is that not relevant for today's market? And I think that's a good question, considering all of the craziness going on in GovTech right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm not specifically familiar with Department of Defense specific certifications. I know for government, you do have to have Security Plus. I don't think that will, in the coming future, I don't think it'll be irrelevant anytime soon. So I think it is worth it. If you're interested in getting cybersecurity, I definitely recommend having Security Plus just to make sure that you check that box at the bare minimum.
And I want to add to that, because ultimately, I think that's one part that a lot of people miss out, right? Is you need, and I'll always go for like industry standard certifications, right? And that's part of where research comes into, right? Like, interestingly, I almost went against my own advice, and I feel like that's why I have the job I have today. Because, when I was going to get my foundational cloud certification, I was supposed to get AWS. I was actually signed up to the AWS, but for some weird reason, when the time came, I went into Google instead. I think I liked their learning interface, and then I got a job on a Google platform. So I think it was really interesting that happened that way. But ultimately, I think if you're going to get any certification, definitely, like, you're going to invest the time in the learning anyway. Try to go for what's like not restricted. Like the Security Plus, as you say, will be relevant in the defense industry and everywhere else. The defense certification is probably not relevant at Google, right? So you definitely want to think the applicability of the skill you're learning to as many of the roles that you're learning, because it's an investment and you want to invest in things that will hold your value over multiple different places. So, you talked about money in the beginning, so maybe we go back there, right? What is the earning potential for somebody in cybersecurity, right? It's one of the hottest roles. People get into it for the money, just like you did partially, allegedly, right? So what is the earning potential?
I mean, it's out there. The numbers are out there. You can absolutely make six figures in this role or in this field. I think the biggest thing for me that I try to tell people getting in is be realistic with your expectations. Like, if you have never worked a role in cybersecurity, unless you get really lucky, you probably not coming out the gate making 100,000. Like, you probably not. Like, don't listen to the YouTube gurus. Like, and it's hard to say that because, like I said, some people do get lucky. Like, I'm not saying that it can't happen. Like, absolutely, you can, end up finding a job where you make 100,000 just straight out the gate. But it's just not likely. And I think a lot of people need to prepare themselves for what's realistic. So my first role in security after the internship, I made $15 an hour. I was hungry. Okay. Literally and figuratively. But the next role that I had where I was working as the network security engineer, I was making 65,000. So I think between 65, 75 is a realistic expectation for like your first role. Where I'm at right now, I do make more than that. But like I said, with my role, I try not to push it to people that like, oh, you're gonna go from 0 to 6 figures in a year just because I did it. Like, it's not common. Like, it's just not common. So, and before I started making the money that I do, I had a conversation with myself, and I like sat down when I was making my $15 an hour, and I'm like, okay, this is what looks realistic. And I just made a plan for myself. Like, okay, by next year, my target is 65,000. By the following year, my target is 85,000. And then by year 4, maybe I'll be at 100,000. I made myself okay with it. And I think that's when things started progressing for me. Whenever I made myself okay with, I might not make 6 figures tomorrow, but I'm still going to do the work.
You share so much good advice, relatable advice. And I really want to thank you for that, because I think there's so much noise, just like you said. And it's always, I mean, that's one of the things that we try to do on, this platform and this forum. It's kind of like distill, let's separate the real from the noise, right? People are trying to sell courses, people are trying to like beat up their chest, they're trying to do all this fancy stuff, but there's the real behind that, right? And I think that's what you get here. I think there's something that you said that I think gets lost on a lot of people that I really want to double click on. See, perspective is very important, right? If you're coming from, making minimum wage or just a little beyond that, making an extra 5, 10, 15, 20,000 can really change your life because that's much more breathability that you get, like less pressure. That could be an extra 1,000 a month on top of what you already made before. But I think the beauty about tech and building a career in tech is not even what you can make today. It's about your future career prospects. That's what you're really building towards. So even those first couple of years, look at it as an investment in yourself because you can go to like the best school in cybersecurity. You can have the best certification. Until you've done the job, you are not going to be as attractive as possible. Literally, like if you work in a big bank as a cybersecurity person, you can literally go to any of the other big banks and get a job there because they know, number one, the role, the inner workings of the business, the regulatory landscape, but also what it takes to work at that kind of company. See, until you have all of that, no matter how intelligent you are, you don't have it. Even if you have it, the recruiters are not going to see it. They are looking for some certain things to check off on a box to say, oh, this person is coming from a competitor. And people like that. Those are signals. People, that's worth a lot of money. So when people tell you, oh, you can do X, Y, Z, they're not telling you all of this context. And ultimately, I think it's always having that growth and abundance mindset, right? Like, think about, I'm doing more better than I was yesterday. Like, if you're going to make a comparison, compare yourself to yourself yesterday, not other people. Are you better than yesterday? The trajectory you're on, will you be better in a year than you are now? And would you get there in the 5 years? And if you get lucky, that's great. But if not, still keep a positive perspective. And I think that's what you said in your answer, right? But I really want to own it again because I interact with people every single day. I see the comments on social media, and it breaks my heart when this kind of things happen because you get it, but not a lot of people don't. And I think I really like that.
No, for sure. And that just kind of goes back to the fact that just all the way from the beginning of my journey, like picking this with no context, like just jumping into this field without really knowing if I was gonna like it. I wouldn't recommend that to people because, like I said, I had to make myself okay with still grinding without seeing results yet. So I have to be able to enjoy it, right? Like I was like miserable every day, day in and day out, learning what I'm learning. Then it wouldn't have made sense, and I wouldn't have stuck with it. So.
Well, I know we're at time. I don't see any more questions. I'm going to read this last comment from Era Jordan. It says, I feel like support roles, if you have some experience for either products or customers, are a great start too. Oh, that's a good one. You know what? I'll let you react to that.
No, I definitely agree. Like a lot of people say you have to start at help desk. No shades to help desk at all. Like if that's where you can get your foot in, absolutely take that opportunity. But help desk is not the only start that you can do. If you have a background in sales, see how you can pivot into cybersecurity sales. See how you can pivot in. Like there's so many companies that sell these cybersecurity tools. They need people to come in and sell them. You will have to learn like enough of the tech to be able to talk about it and to be able to effectively sell it. But if you have a skill base in something that is necessary, like sales, then transfer it into that. Like look for where your transferable skills are going to be valued.
And I will tack one last thing onto that, right? Is somebody said something on the podcast that I thought was so profound, right? If there's a company you want to work at and you can get in, even in a non-tech role, get in there. I think there's so much, but it goes back even to this point. There's so much that can happen in proximity. See, one of the things that we talk about, like not having that experience. Mm-hmm. If you work as a teller at a bank and you get a cybersecurity certification, it's not a cybersecurity role at a bank, but you could probably get a cybersecurity role at a bank just because you have banking and cybersecurity. It's not the cleanest thing, but it works. I've seen it work for people. So no experience is a waste. And I think it goes back to the fundamental principle. invest in yourself. Not everything is going to be a direct payoff, but invest in yourself. That's the show for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't know if you have something. Typically, before we go, we usually you might have a movie coming out. You might have a podcast you want people to check out. Whatever it is, this is the time for you to shout it out.
Y'all can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Devonie Nelson.
So connect with Devonie Nelson on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for this. A lot of great advice you've shared. It's been an amazing episode. That's the show for tonight, guys. We'll be back here next week with another person in tech, breaking down the role, the salary, the opportunities, and how you can make the break yourself as well. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.